Recess Committee for May 6th to order. And the only thing, I guess we'll just go around, do introductions, and then the only thing, I think there's no public comments, so we'll just go straight to the charter schools. Should start on the, hey, Terry.
Terry Proctor, Communications Department.
Karina Wolf, Senior Director of Schools, Multiple Pathways Graduation.
Eddie Long, board member.
Patty Sullivan, board member.
Jay Biano, Chief of Student Support Services. John Franco, Chief of Schools.
Cheryl Proctor, Deputy Superintendent.
Kara Bradshaw, Executive Assistant.
Is everyone, Director Green? You're on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. Herman Green, board member.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, do you want to, Karina, do you want to just take it away?
Sure,
I don't know how.
happy to. So I have my volume off. Is that okay, Terry?
That's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I will just say, good afternoon, board members. It's a pleasure to be with you. Just making sure I'm not echoing. So today we are going to talk about the charter school performance framework for each of the 5 PPS-sponsored charter schools. It is a statutory obligation to speak about the performance at a public meeting each year, and so this meeting serves that purpose. Just a little bit about the charter school office. The charter school office within PPS is situated within Multiple Pathways to Graduation. And so today what I'd like to do is just provide an overview of our charter schools, speak a bit about their annual performance reports, and answer any questions. And then I understand we don't have any public comment, but if we did, it would be at the end. Just as far as the overview on our charter schools, so the charter schools office is located within Multiple Pathways to Graduation, and it provides support to, currently there's 1,812 students enrolled in the 7 charter schools that are within PPS's geographic boundaries. Those include 5 PPS authorized charter schools and 2 state-sponsored charter schools. ODE has approved 4. In our state, we have 4 state-sponsored charter schools, and 2 of them are within PPS boundaries.
Sorry, which ones are the state-sponsored ones?
I'm going to get to them in just a second. It's Ivy and Cottonwood. They're both K-8s. So we, again, are in compliance with ORS 338. Part of what the work of the Charter Schools Office does is we provide oversight and support and supervision with regard to the operations of charter schools. And so part of how that we operationalize that is once a week, every Tuesday afternoon, we have a charter directors meeting where the charter directors come together and we talk about issues that are coming up, deliverables that are forthcoming. It serves part as a resource sharing and part as a PLC among the school leaders. We also in the charter school office are responsible for all the applications, charter school applications. We just, within the last week, and those dates are outlined in statute. So within the last week, we can now say we've received no charter school applications this year. For the coming year, but if we had, the charter school office is charged with completing the application process in a way that is outlined in statute by the state. We provide contract renewals, and then we provide annual and ongoing support. The support and accountability in the performance frameworks are really a 3-legged stool. So it's really the annual and fiscal fortitude of the charter school, the operations and management of the charter school, and then the academic achievement for students. And then additionally, we provide ongoing school site visits. With regard to who our charter schools are, within the 5 PPS-sponsored charter schools, we have 1,337 students this year. We have Emerson K5. We have Kairos PDX is a K5, and Portland Arthur Academy is also a K5. We have 2 K8s, Lamont French Immersion, as well as Portland Village School. And then the two, to your earlier question, the 2 state-sponsored charter schools are Cottonwood School for Civics and Science and the Ivy School, and they are both K8s. So sometimes when you look at data, you'll see charter schools have 1,812 students, and other times you'll look at data, and if it's a smaller number, we try to denote that it's just the PPS authorized charter schools.
Can you explain the difference between charter and alternatives?
Yeah, absolutely. So a charter school, it's described in statute. And so a charter school is run as, it's for the purpose, it has a few purposes. One is it's identified in state statute as to bring innovation into school districts. And so sometimes they refer to themselves as lab schools. So they have different curriculum. They can choose their curriculum and their focus. And they can either be a it's similar to other schools. They can be a K5, a K8, middle school or high school. An alternative school by design follows different school statute or state statute. And so an alternative school by design is designed to meet the needs of students whose needs have not been met in previous schools. And it's typically centered in alternative schools. It's typically centered on what we call the ABCs. So students who struggle with attendance, students who struggle with behavior, or students who struggle with course completion. So the vast, vast majority of students in alternative school are credit deficient. Although I'll be the first person to say that 9% of our students are TAG students. So they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, because I taught at MLC.
Right.
They were pretty high achieving, at least in K8.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so sometimes some of the similarities around alternative schools and charter schools are sometimes different school models. And so you'll see both in our alternative schools as well as in like Emerson K8, we'll talk about in just a second, is project-based learning or different kind of modalities around what the curricular program is.
I noticed in looking at a lot of these, it seemed like it was low achieving.
So we have really worked over the course of the last several years, and our goal for our charter schools is to have the learners, the communities of learners, reflect the district's population. And so that has increased over time.
But it's still people choosing it because it's a different model, because they want
People choose it, it's a lottery.
education.
Yep. It's a lottery-based system that's also outlined in statute. So just with regard to the first school, Emerson K5 is project-based learning. Their enrollment has 134 students. They moved in December, just recently, they moved to a new location in Southwest Portland. And they just, in part because of previous, the last renewal that they received just in recent years, they were able to achieve a 15-year lease with a 5-year additional option. So one of the things that we look for with regard to management and fiscal is solvency is around, right, their building and how, what their cash, what their fiscal situation is. And so being able to get into a 15-year lease was really helpful for Emerson. The 22-23 state assessment data, so our performance framework shows no concerns with Emerson at any grade. The additional assessments that Emerson uses includes guided reading, running records, Lucy Calkins, Bridges Math, end of unit, and project group. Kairos PDX is another K5 PPS sponsored charter school. Kairos is PDX's mission and focus is on eliminating racial opportunity and achievement gaps by providing anti-racist and culturally affirming education. They currently have 245 students. They have a new school leader, David Shepard just recently came on board as the Dean of School Performance. And their 22-23 performance framework also showed no performance concerns. Their school's performance meets or exceeds the district's performance for students who are historically underserved by race, which is the majority of Kairos PDX's student population. Kairos is one of 2 schools that recently qualified for Title I Targeted Intervention Program for the 24-25 school year. Additional assessments that Kairos uses includes MAP, Fountainson Pinnell benchmarks, and they are located in Northeast Portland. They're in Humboldt Elementary School, so currently they have a lease with the district. All the other charter schools are in non-PPS facilities.
A really quick question.
Sure.
You want us to ask questions at the end of the presentation or as we go?
Whatever you prefer, as you go is fine.
Could you explain to me just really quick as I was looking at the data what the gap metric is? What was it called?
For Kairos in particular.
Gap score change? Yeah, because I know not just Kairos, just in general. Because I was looking at all the other schools, the gap score change, and there were some that were not meeting expectations, like D or F. Just curious what that means.
So it's the gap between what the district score is and their score.
Okay.
So if they're exceeding district's performance, like just as an example for 3.5 ELA. If they're exceeding, that would mean they're exceeding the district's performance at 3.5 ELA.
Okay. And then for Kairos, I was looking at the data. Yeah, for their historically underserved group, they're performing slightly better in math and English language than the district average, but it wasn't by like surprising amount. It was just by like 2% and like almost 10% for math. So I'm just kind of curious how much of that is. I mean, one of the things with charter schools is hard to discern, right? Because when you look at the other data, they weren't doing as well, for like sorry, I need the disabilities, English language learners, economic disadvantage. They weren't doing as well as the historically underserved. So I'm just curious, like, could that be attributed to the fact that, because it's a charter school, they're sort of self-selected, right? Tend to be more involved parents that help put their kids in school. So, I mean, is that with that small of a gap, or sorry, difference, is that significant? I'm not trying to be hard. I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a range, just like you shared. So I think it can be a small improvement or under performance, or it can be larger.
Yeah, because I mean, if they're serving a need that the district is currently not able to meet, then that's great. But I just want to make sure that we are holding them to that, right?
Yep. And that's what I'll say. A couple things. One is that some of the myths around charter schools. One of the things that is important is that the state identifies how students are enrolled in charter schools, and the state identifies that as a lottery process, in part to make sure that that folks have an equal chance of getting in and enrolled in a school. And so I also think that with Kairos, but also with other schools, it is, as we noted, like the demographics are, Kairos is predominantly students of color, of historically underserved races, and then the demographics are changing over time. And so it's not always just, I don't disagree with you about affluent parents wanting sometimes to go to charter schools, and they too have to apply and go through the lottery process just like everyone else. So part of what we have tried to do over the course of the last several years is really look at outreach campaigns. All of the charter schools, all 7 of them having their brochures and their information and all translated into all the major languages, and put to different places. So you're going to see more English language learners as an example, and when we look at some of the charter schools such as Arthur, because there's this really specific effort trying to get a diverse student body.
And this is, I didn't mean this as directing at Kairos PD.
No, totally.
Just
Yeah, I was,
charter schools in general. But like, I mean, yes, it's a lottery, but it's also, it's not real. I mean, it's a lottery, but it's a lottery among people who apply, right? And so, you know, it's,
that's true.
I would say that's not a true random thing, right? So, in terms of application process, is there, how simple and easy accessible is the application process? I know there's been changes in the last
So the
decade, so I'm just curious. I'm not up to date.
Thank you for the question. So the application process includes that each school on their website provides information around the application process. We in the Multiple Pathways website, and then also we work with Judy Brennan and the team in Enrollment and Transfer.
Okay.
And so her team also gives information as students or families are inquiring about what different school options are. And so we follow each of those. There's various places of information where we're trying to get the information out to families.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Is there a class size limit?
yes. So in each of the charter schools, when we provide the contract with the charter school, we authorize them as the authorizer, as a school district, we authorize them a certain number of slots, and we authorize them at specific grades. And so they will come to us with a proposal, and then we will have conversations about, and that's part of what when we work, none of these are a contract renewal process, but both at the time of application and anytime there's a contract renewal, those, a charter school can request to increase, or the district could say, we've approved you for 200 slots. Going forward, we'd like to approve you for 220, or going forward, we'd like to approve you for 180. So it's a negotiation that gets identified every time there's a contract renewal.
I'm just curious, what is the class size?
At Kairos?
Yeah.
That is a really good question. I can get you the specific information.
And I mean really at all of them, just if you can get it for all of them.
I would be happy to get it. I would be happy to get it, all of them. And it's also dependent on their facilities, and then it's how many sections per grade, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Kairos gets Title I additional funds as well, right?
They have not yet. They just qualified, so they will start getting them next year. Yeah, you bet. Next we have Lamond French Immersion. So Lamond is a K-8 French language immersion school. It is an IB World School, and it does IB in the primary years. The enrollment is 374 students, and in our performance framework for 22-23, their state assessment data showed they exceed state and district averages. One of the things that's of note with regard to Lamond is 100% of their graduates at 8th grade meet high school language arts credit, or language credit, world language credit, the requirement prior to starting 9th grade.
What is the, do you know off the top of your head, you can always answer this later, what the demographics are at Lamond?
I can get you that.
Okay.
Yeah. They're located in Southeast Portland, and their additional assessments include MAP, DIBELS, and IDPAL, the French assessment.
Is there, in terms of French immersion, like, is there a need that they're trying to meet? You know, I'm just curious about I'm not as familiar with I mean, I've heard of them, of course, or many, but like, what was the need that spawned the creation of a French immersion school?
A desire for French world language from families. That was what was presented. They're the only DLI school that's French in our district.
So no native French speakers.
They
Probably.
They try to have native French they have tried very hard to have native French teachers, but yeah, probably very little
But
native French speakers.
it's not like Spanish immersion, which is trying to actually help native Spanish speakers. This is completely optional. You want to learn French, right?
Overwhelmingly, yeah.
Do you know if it runs the same as the Spanish immersion with mostly French in kindergarten and getting more and more English as you go up?
It does,
Well, once they have it.
yes, it does.
Yeah, okay. So it's really a whole different.
The grade levels for that school again is
K-8. Our next charter school is Portland Arthur Academy. Portland Arthur Academy is one of 6 Portland Arthur one of 6 Arthur Academies. There's some others in East County. Portland Arthur Academy specializes in direct instruction. Their enrollment is at 160, and the state performance framework reflects no immediate concerns in their reporting. 30% of Portland Arthur students are English language learners. The 22-23 state report card reported that 87.5% of the school's English learners are on track to English proficiency, which is greater than the school district overall. Portland Arthur is the other charter school that has also qualified recently for the Targeted Intervention Program for Title I services and supports next year. They're located in Southeast Portland, and their additional assessments include Easy CBM and Mastery Learning of DI program assessments, or instruction program assessments. The last PPS sponsored school is Portland Village School. It's a K-8. It's Waldorf inspired, standards-based education. There's 427 students. The school just recently purchased a new facility on the South Waterfront with the assistance of the Oregon Facilities Authority, and they plan to occupy in this September. So they are someone who also was able to, following their last contract renewal, go into a long-term lease and to work to purchase a new facility. So their lease in North Portland was coming due, and so the facility they found is in the South Waterfront. So they will be moved. They are wrapping up the school year and will be transitioning out of that facility. Their state assessment data released showed academic performance below the district average in both math and language arts, both at the 3-5 as well as the 6-8 grade levels. If progress towards improvement is not seen in the 23-24 state assessment data, a formal plan of improvement will be required and created during the 24-25 school year. The school currently has provided a plan and started to already articulate a plan in place particularly to improving math achievement and growth during this current school year. Additional assessments include Easy CBM, Bridges Math, and end of unit mid-school math. So they are one of the charter schools who has shown an interest in some of the district curriculum and looking at the integration of how they can support improved math achievement with mid-school math, which is what we as our in-district schools use as well.
What did you say their focus was?
Their focus is a Waldorf inspired. And then just switching to our state-sponsored schools. So again, our state-sponsored schools are assessed, and their performance framework is done by ODE with regard to their metrics and their performance. But we, as a school district, because they are located in our district, we are the pass-through. So we work through our budget office works with our charter office, and we pass through our state school fund as well as our SIA dollars, while ODE provides kind of overall support Our general, and this is one of the things just to point out, so the general education students are not included in our PPS synergy. So they're not counted in our PPS numbers, but the special education students are included in our PPS special education numbers
Is that,
for the district and for the state.
is that just because it has to be at the district level that is responsible to service special education requirements,
Yes. So each of these,
not a state responsibility? Just
each of these organizations hires all of their own employees. The only employees that are Portland Public School employees are the special educators in all of our schools. That's why.
Okay.
So that's that. And then just a little bit on our charter schools. So Cottonwood School of Science and Civics is a place-based education model. So they are K-8 and they enroll 203 students. Excuse me, the school reports they have 29% students with disabilities, and they are also located on the Southwest waterfront. The Ivy School is the other state-sponsored school. It is a K-8 Montessori model. They enroll 273 students, excuse me, and they have 20% students with disabilities, and they're located in Northeast Portland. Here's just some information on our demographics.
Do you have the test results on those two, or do we not keep track of those on those last two?
The ODE has the test results, and they're the ones that are responsible for doing the performance framework for those. Neither of those are, to my knowledge, neither of those have any plans of improvement.
You can go back to the demographics really quick.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
Is it possible to get the demographic? I mean, not now, obviously, but to get the demographics for each school specifically?
Sure, absolutely.
What is there? I know there's like site visits and stuff like that, but what other forms of oversight is there for our charter schools besides just, keeping track of math and reading scores?
So site visits is a big piece where we're out and talking and doing classroom observations and working with leaders. We work, like I said, every week. We have a charter school director meeting where we're talking about, it's a shared agenda. So we're talking about, issues that are coming up and topics that are coming up for charter schools throughout the year. So we stay in really pretty close contact with all of our charter schools and all of our charter leaders. One of the things, I don't know, Terry or Kara, did Sunita come in?
Yeah, she's in the attendee section.
Can you bring her in so I can introduce her?
I can request that she come over. There you go. She should be here.
A lot
Okay.
of special ed, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that higher percent of special ed than in our other schools?
I think we're at 16% overall.
There tends to be a little bit of a higher percentage in charter schools. Not hugely, but it tends to be a bit
Yes,
higher.
sir.
If I don't know if Sunita is able to come on the screen, but I'm going to just share. So in December, our charter school program director retired, Tara O'Neill, who did a great job for 8 years. And then we have recently, were recently able to hire. And so Sunita Sandoz, there she is. Hi, Miss Sunita.
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm away visiting family, but I really wanted to be here at this meeting. So I apologize for my background at my sister's house, but I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, even when you're out of town. I appreciate that. So I'm really excited to announce that Sunita will be starting on Wednesday as our new program director of charter schools. And so Similar to Tara O'Neill, who was previously in the role, that's rarely where the main point of contact for oversight and supervision and support comes. And Sunita joins us from Emerson. So she has been the head of school at Emerson for the last 8 years and has lots of experience before that as well. But she's very well versed in as a part of our charter school network. So really understands long-term relationship with both Portland Public Schools and the other charter schools.
Do we have this presentation somewhere? Or is it on here?
I actually don't think it's in board, but I don't have it. I looked for it after you asked.
Oh, okay. I thought it was posted.
Yeah, I thought Roseanne said it was posted.
It's not.
Okay,
great.
for sure. Okay, and then
We will get it in board book.
thank you, Roseanne. So that's really kind of just a general overview that I wanted to share, and
Thank you.
I'm happy to answer any more questions, or just also happy to get any information that you'd like that wasn't provided today.
I'm curious if, you mentioned that the Oregon statute in the description of charter schools calls them like providing innovation and education, right? As lab schools was what the quotes, right? Have we ever gotten data, or charter schools ever provided data that was a benefit to districts? I mean, I'm sure in the country, yes, but in our case, have we?
So I think
If they're lab schools, right, they should have some kind of results that gives better clues to best practices, right? And so I'm just curious about if that has ever happened.
so. We share the data. I think it's one of the areas of growth is around professional development. So one of the things that the charter schools historically have offered is to include PPS teachers or a broader community when they're doing professional developments. And so that has happened in the past, and I think that's one of the intentions and one of the pieces of work to share practices. And how are we sharing practices among schools? And so that certainly does happen to some degree, and it's certainly an area that we can continue to improve in. One of the things right off the top of my head is there was and it was a couple years ago, but Kairos, as an example, did a culturally responsive teaching series that a number of and opened up to our PPS teachers. And so there were a number of teachers that participated in that series as an example, just to hear how they do that. Opal School, which closed a couple years ago, but previously had a program as training in the summer that was kind of an internationally kind of renowned training program where some of our Portland Public Schools teachers would go through that training every year, as well as they would open it up beyond our district. But there's opportunities like that where we ask or encourage or just are excited to support hearing and seeing different practices that charter schools are reporting and finding success about.
Is the funding the same as for?
The funding is not the same. So the funding for the funding for high school is a pass-through rate at 95%, and the funding at K-8 is 80%.
By pass through, you mean
Of
funding
state
from state?
school fund,
Okay.
yes. And then what happened a year ago was the school board committee voted and then took it to the full board and adopted a resolution that if to acknowledge kind of the challenge of working in really small, and Director Green can share more about this too if he's still,
I remember
Director
seeing that.
Green.
Oh, I'm here. I popped on because I heard you say 80%. And I thought we changed that.
I was just gonna say that.
Okay.
And so part of what happened was that was raised by 5%. And then if schools were in addition to that, if schools are serving majority of students of color, then that was also raised to 90%. We at this time we only have K-8s. We don't have any current high schools. So then that was raised to 90%.
Yeah, I remember seeing that meeting or watching that meeting on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's great.
And then the teachers are hired by the
Organization by the charter schools
By the
are
charter.
the charter schools are their own nonprofit organizations.
so they do not necessarily, they're not necessarily PAT members.
No, they are not.
They're not.
The only PAT members that are stationed at charter schools are special educators. Other things that I'm forgetting, Director Green, that you want to talk about?
No, I was just wanting to make sure that what we passed did in fact happen. And that it's not sitting somewhere for other reasons.
No, sir.
No, we're locked in. So good to go.
Is yeah, some few. Yeah, I would. Yeah, if you can get the demographics, that'd be great. I mean, I understand that makes sense. I like that. That resolution, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I also understand when charter schools are servicing a need that the district can't meet, especially for you know, using our equity lens, the historically underserved or special needs or economic disadvantage. I think there's a lot of potential benefit there. I'm a little bit worried about Lamont's numbers because they're exceed. It's almost too good. So I mean, it to me that screams that it's a very select group of families and students. And so like when we talk about, you know, we try to be as equity focused in our district, you know, what, I guess this is kind of an open-ended question. It's not looking for a specific answer. But in what ways do we apply the equity lens? I mean, obviously only certain groups of people are going to be applying to a French immersion school. But yeah, in what ways do we apply the equity lens in this case, right? And again, I know I'm not trying
I think I can help with that. I think I can help with that because I was, at the time as I was the committee chair, wanting to ensure that everything, all the decisions that we were making were in fact being looked at through an equity lens. What it came down to was that equity is not always simply about black and white, right? Equity is about the charter schools serve a group of kids that aren't getting what the parents don't feel like they're getting what they need. The students may not feel that they're getting what they need in some of the traditional school systems. So they are in turn going to these charter schools because they believe that these charter schools are going to be able to provide them with the level of education that they're aspiring to get to. The teachers that are going there are there because they believe in teaching a certain kind of way. And so when I began to look at it through the equity lens, what I was looking at was not equality in that everybody gets the same amount. It's looking at how do we ensure that the people that need more supports in order to be at a level playing field are getting the type of supports that they need. The pass-through amount that we were looking at the time became a huge point of contention in that the state was giving us a certain amount of money for charter schools, and then we were in turn taking those dollars and applying them to these charter schools, but they weren't getting everything that they were supposed to get. They were only getting a smaller portion of it. And then some of that we were saying was administrative fees. And then when we began to break that down, it turned out that we were only using it only took about 3% of what was coming through, anywhere from 3 to 5% of what was coming through in administrative fees to support these charter schools. And then we were taking the additional pass-through amounts, and then when we were using them to pad the general fund so that we could say equity in other areas. Well, the money that they're giving us was for charter schools. It was the numbers were based on the charter schools. And so if they're going to be giving us this money, then we should be using this money to lift up and support the charter schools to ensure that they're getting the level of support that they need. It became an issue when I believe it's something about like the fees that charter schools have to pay. And if Sunita is on, I sat with her because she broke the whole thing down for me and was like, we're paying an astronomical amount in these fees, these state fees that we have to pay for our employees. And it's like, it was upwards of like 33%. And the school district was not having to pay nearly that amount, but yet they were taking charter school dollars to pad the general fund. From an equity perspective, these charter schools need all the support that they can get if they're going to be effective for the families that need them the most. And the dollars that we're getting from the state, if it's earmarked for charter schools, should go towards charter schools, period. We should use, in my world, in my mind, what I was going to push for was 100% of the dollars that we get for charter schools should in fact go to charter schools. But I like the variation of pushing our charter schools to think about how they're being intentional towards other populations of color and families of color and students of color. I like that idea. So I do believe we should give a little bit more to those, because there are some families that, with people of color that would thrive in these charter schools, but they can't afford to go there for whatever the reason. So let's make it easier. Transportation became another issue. So when we were looking at it through the equity lens, it wasn't a black and white. Equity is not simply black and white. Equity is about needs, and it's making sure that the people that need the most get the supports that they need. And so everybody knows, it's no secret, Herman Green has a black agenda. I love black people. I love us with all of my heart, and I'm gonna do everything that I can to support us. However, when I was sitting in this seat, it could not simply be about, well, it's not impacting black people, so it doesn't really matter. Equity, because of where I sit at, I don't have the luxury of just choosing a side and sticking there. It'd be easy to do that, but that's not what I have the luxury of doing. Equity is really, when you dissect it, break it all the way down, it's not black and white. It's about needs. What the need is, who has, and then some people need more than other people. And so I was just breaking it down for, like, when it comes to charter schools, let's look at the needs. It's not about most of the kids that go into the charter schools are white. I know that. You know that. Everybody in this room know that. I don't think that's a secret. And we would like them to get more people of color into their schools. So I think we need to work with TriMet. I mean, if we really want to start pushing the issue, let's start looking at how we can get TriMet to support what we're doing so that we can get create pathways for more families of color to get into these charter schools. But it's not just simply, well, we need to take some of this money and pad the general fund, because that's not what the money was for. It's in fact stealing. So I'm gonna stop talking, because I'm on a soapbox. But Sunita was with me. She helped me a lot. I remember. Yeah.
Director Green, thank you for remembering the conversation that we had. And I think I would just follow that up with the additional challenge that charter schools have that you've so eloquently been describing, is that with a portion of the funding that neighborhood schools receive, we are then tasked with finding our own facility, which I was sharing with you. Okay, we have to pay market rate rent. We have to find a facility. And we also pay into PERS liabilities at a very exorbitant rate, a high rate. The highest rate in the state is for charter schools. And so that's an added challenge for us. And so if I speak now on behalf of the Emerson School, which I have been the director of for 8 years, and I'm transitioning into this new role, what that means for our tiny school at the Emerson School of 134 students, as Karina gave a presentation. We are paying about, now with our new facility and parking, about $22,000 a month in rent for our new facility. And we are paying about $16,000 a month into PERS liabilities, which that is a real challenge for a small school without economy of scale. And we're keeping things going with, thank you, Director Green and PPS for moving our pass-through rate to that 90%. And so with that 90%, then we have to contend with market rate rent and added PERS challenges in terms of how much we need to pay each month into PERS liabilities. So I think I think that's what you're speaking about. And we've appreciated so much that PPS has moved that needle for us. And that is what allowed the Emerson School to move into this new building that Karina shared. The Emerson School now has a 15-year lease with a 5-year option. And then she also shared that Portland Village School will be purchasing a building. And really PPS has allowed for that to happen by moving the needle for us in terms of the pass-through rate changing from that 80% to the 90%. And so thank you for that. And I appreciate you kind of remembering our conversation and making sure that has sort of moved along, and that is where we are right now, and that's our reality in charters in PPS currently, and we're eternally grateful because it's really allowing for that long-term sustainability for these unique schools of choice. And I appreciate your kind of sharing a little bit more about how these schools really provide unique models and approaches to education that families in Portland are looking for, and they are maybe needing something a little bit different for their child, and hopefully the charter schools in Portland are meeting those needs and can continue to do so now.
Then
Go ahead.
curious, so I imagine you have to do some fundraising just to stay afloat.
We certainly do. Yes, all of the charter schools within the district and also the 2 state-sponsored charter schools do independent fundraising to sort of bridge that gap. And again, the gap isn't that 10% necessarily, because we are also paying for our facilities and the PERS, as well as other things. And so, yes, we definitely do need to do fundraising. And we also have been fortunate enough to receive the same as other PPS schools have received, some federal funding and state funding in regard to coming out of pandemic, in terms of the ESSER funds that we've received. And SIA funds that we have received. So that has been a blessing as well. And we are looking toward the future and being allowed the opportunity to apply for other grants. There's an early literacy grant that the state has promoted, and charters have been able to apply for those funds as well, in the same way that neighborhood schools have been able to apply for those grants. So we're taking those opportunities when they arise, and they are appropriate for charter schools as well.
And I just want to add, so the resolution that Director Green promoted and passed had 85% the first year, and then now it is 90% for all K-8s. And then Kairos has, for any school that has a majority of students of color, it's another 5%. So all the other charter schools are at 90% and Kairos is at 95. I just want to stand corrected.
Yeah, and there seems to me there'd be nothing wrong with a charter school that was aimed at tag kids or kids that are ADD or whatever. Would there be a problem with having a focus like that?
So I think one of the things that we are trying to do, like just with regard to Emerson and some of the other schools, is looking at, like with regard to project-based learning, one of the fundamental pieces of that is movement, like for students who need movement and benefit from movement. So I think some of those criteria with regard to how are we meeting the needs of learners are taken into consideration in the application process. And when we look at the application process, it's really outlined, the state really outlines what it really guides the process around what is required for an approval and what is allowable as to be denied. So there's so some of that is guided by how the state outlines the application as well as the renewal process.
I mean, I understand some of the uniqueness and stuff like that, but I mean, nothing I hear is much different than what's considered best practices in general at any school, right? And I guess, sorry, Director Green, that wasn't actually where I was directing my question. I have no problem with the resolution that was passed. I agree with you saying 100%. My issue comes from the fact that when we are not talking about historically underserved populations, like charter schools have a very, troubled history, right? In terms of a lot of charter schools were formed because they didn't want to send, parents did not want to send their kids to the same schools as the brown and black kids. I specifically know some examples of some charter schools that had harsher penalties for their kids of color, disciplining, kicking them out as much as they can so that they are, and I know that happened in Portland, not this decade, but luckily, or fortunately, but it has happened so that they became whiter over time. So my question is, what kind of oversight do we have so that we are not promoting those kind of behaviors, if that makes sense? Yeah, I'm not trying to grill you. I know that you're still.
No, it's fine.
Director.
I think it's a really good question. So one of the pieces is the charter school director, who was Tara, starting on Wednesday will be Sunita, and myself are out in schools working and building relationships, talking about what, to your point, what best practice is, hearing about how charter schools are implementing best practice and or their efforts to improve, similar to all of our in-district schools. And so I would say school visits, as well as we have ongoing communication, weekly communication with our charter schools. I have Maria Giannotti is one of the program administrators in special education who's assigned to the charter school, who I'm in contact with quite frequently. Okay. And so if there's a conversation, she and I had a conversation 2 weeks ago around a particular student who's enrolled in receiving special education services and is having some challenges, right, in their current school. That's very similar to, as a principal supervisor, to program administrators, Lorraine Allen, who is a program administrator for special education, who we will talk about a particular kiddo at MLC or a kiddo at Alliance. So I think we're having conversations, the special education team is having conversations with the charter office, with the multiple pathways office, and we're having our weekly meetings with charter directors, as well as our kind of ongoing throughout the school year process with schools.
Okay, to extend on that, one of the things I'm always concerned about charter schools is that maybe it's better now, I'm hoping it's better now, but one of the issues in the past about charter schools is that they're often were more lenient in terms of documentation, right? And so, like, for example, keeping track of discipline data. Is there any way we could get a rundown? Is there any way to check in on discipline data for each of the schools?
In all of our charter contracts, all of the data that's required for any of our schools is required for our charter schools. So our charter schools use Synergy. Okay. They record discipline incidents in Synergy. Great. And when we do discipline cleanup at various times of the year, we are looking at all of our schools, including our charter schools.
That's great.
If there are challenges or with particular situations as they're coming up, we're more often than not, we're talking about those. And that's the positive piece of having a strong, positive relationship as a charter school community. In that, as I said earlier, like leaders are talking together up around what's the impact on school organization and operation, as well as like what are different impacts around academic achievement and how are we reaching the needs of various types of learners. So we really have kind of an ongoing PLC where there's a lot of communication and work, as well as previously it was Tara and myself kind of out in schools, and or Maria, our special education program administrator, or whoever the program administrator is for special education is out also. So we're staying in a similar touch and contact as we do, as for myself is in the role of a principal supervisor, as I do with other schools that I supervise.
Okay, that's good news. I like that.
And the organizations hire their head of school, right? They're not our employees. We're not evaluating them. The organization is evaluating their principal, and the principal's evaluating their teachers. So it's not exactly similar. I just want to be clear.
Right.
But we're providing support and accountability and annual reporting and a whole variety of pieces.
I can say that the issue or the concerns around TriMet, the reason that those came up, as I understand from when I was, because I would go around and visit the charter schools, that issue came up from one of the charters, like when the charter schools coming together. There was a conversation around how are we going to be more diverse, or what are some of the challenges that we need to help us overcome some of our lack of diversity. And TriMet was a big issue, like trying to get some sort of agreement with TriMet for their students. So that I know that it's something, and Director Wong, I'm grateful that you continue to ring that bell always. You never need to apologize about that. And I know that it's something that they are striving to get better at. They are definitely not where we would like them to be, which is why we keep that additional 5% as an incentive that you too can get to 95% if you too can show an increase in your diversity. And so I know that it's something that they want. I know that it's something that they are intentionally working on, or at least they were last year, intentionally working on trying to be better at, trying to improve. And it's one of those things that it's not going to happen overnight. And we have to continue to do exactly what we're doing right now. Ask the question of what type of metrics are we putting in place to look at diversity, and how are we keeping it from becoming just a place that doesn't want to have people of color there? And how are we making sure that we're intentional about it? So I appreciate you for raising it. So thank you.
Welcome. Thanks. Yeah, I'd be interested in that TriMet piece as well. I think that's a great point, because I mean, if the student body is reflective of the general population, that's a good. But if it's not, then we have to look into it. You mentioned about when you do the same kind of accountability piece for all their schools, which is great, and looking at synergy and discipline data and things like that. And I assume at the end of the year, there's usually some kind of summative product or report or something like that for all our schools, right? Ideally, it would be for all our schools, right?
Summative report. Well, we have each school, it has a school improvement plan.
Okay.
And so it's a living document for our in-district schools. And there's a similar type of plan at each of our charter schools. But I don't know that there's an end of year report as you're describing. There's a performance framework for the charter schools. I think what you said is even better. So yeah, but then the general thing is, if there's a red flag, it's noticed and people are working on it. And that's all I need to know. Thank you.
I'm curious about the IEPs there. Are you in charge of all?
Everything.
I know you are. I see that. So, who does the testing then? Their teachers?
No, we do.
All your teachers, and they would call you and say, "I think I have
Well, we have folks on site.
Okay.
So we have teachers and assigned school psychs and assigned SLPs to the buildings. And they work with the charter school teachers and they refer, have team meetings that function pretty similarly to our school team meetings.
Okay, so those are our teachers.
But yeah, the special educators that
special
are assigned to the buildings are PPS employees.
PPS.
Yeah.
Okay. And
And they follow a process, like an MTSS, a problem-solving process when it comes to meeting the needs of children. And they try interventions and track the effectiveness and the impact of those interventions. And then it's a full process where a committee would then, with the parent and with data, make a recommendation for next steps if it is felt that a student would benefit from an assessment for special education services. So
then are the services available in the charter?
Yeah, we provide them at the schools.
but they don't call Jay and say, hey,
No, well, why
I got a
not?
kid that
Call through. I call you up.
Dude.
Thank you.
Great.
That's
Sure.
answered my question.
Yeah, thank you. It's very helpful. So for me,
Any other questions?
Director Gray, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I just want to say thank you for the report. Again, as usual, it's very thorough. Sometimes a little more information than we need or we feel we need at that time, but it's always solid. So thank you so much to the team and for all the work that they put into this and making sure that that we had what we needed. So I appreciate you all.
Thank you, Director Green. You're very welcome.
Yeah, ditto. Thank you.
It was a lot to read.
It's a good read. There's some good data in there.
Yeah, interesting data.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to present and thank you for your questions. I'm happy I'll get you the information that you asked for, and I'm always happy to share any information about any of our charter schools or multiple pathway schools.
So thank you.
Yeah, I
Appreciate the
would
work.
like to know more about the alternative schools too.
Yeah.
Are there other pathways before these two, alternative and charter?
There's alternative charter, and then there's day and residential treatment. And then we have our programs like our youth re-engagement program, our reconnection center and reconnection services. But we have our DART schools, which stands for day and residential treatment, that the students renamed a few years ago, Discovering and Rising Together schools, so that which are also K-12. So they're students in either day treatment or residential treatment.
Get in touch with you because that's
Yes,
very interesting.
yes, absolutely.
About all that.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Great, thank you. I appreciate
That's
them.
it.
Awesome. All right, with that, if no one has any questions or comments, we can adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy your Monday.
Hey, everyone.